I think that your job as a CEO is to be a realistic optimist. It's like, it's not to be, I think it is true that like people want clarity. Even though people say they like ambiguity, lots of people don't like lots of uncertainty. So they're looking for it's like all of it, and it's sometimes hard. They're looking for authenticity, transparency, yet a reason to believe, right? Clarity. If the future is very uncertain, what is certain? Does that make sense? Certainty with that uncertainty. So I think as a CEO, I think your job is to sort of take all of that and say, okay, well, how can I acknowledge what's ambiguous, yet give people clarity on the things that need to be true for us to be successful, and a path or confidence that you can get there, even if the path is hard.
Hello and welcome to FranklinCovey on Leadership. I'm your host, Will Hodeling. Today's guest is Sukhinder Singh Cassidy, the CEO of Xero, a global platform that helps small businesses and their advisors run accounting and increasingly payroll and payments in the cloud. Sukhinder Singh Cassidy has had a fascinating career. Before Xero, she co-founded the fintech pioneer Yodlee. She helped scale Google internationally and later led teams at companies like StubHub, where she served as CEO. She's also an entrepreneur and author of Choose Possibility, where she explores how leaders build the habit of taking smart risks when the path isn't obvious. In today's conversation, we'll discuss the business she's building at Xero, her leadership lessons across her diverse and varied career. And we'll also dive into her personal experience as a mother and Canadian at a global company. Sukhinder, welcome to FranklinCovey on Leadership.
Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. I'm very excited for today's conversation. So you've had an incredibly impressive career spanning startups, Google, large companies that you've helped scale, and now your time as CEO at Xero. I heard you say in another interview that you often take very dedicated, intentional time off in between opportunities, and that's to recharge and to play and to enjoy yourself. And it's also to make sure that you are opting into the right experience rather than just reacting to what people bring to you. So you said before taking this job at Xero, you took 2 years off and you spent about a year of that fielding different CEO opportunities. And so by the time you joined Xero, you were incredibly confident this was the right opportunity. Why were you so confident?
Look, I always say, first of all, I think looking for a CEO job is a little different than looking for a regular job in the sense that on the one hand, you're the person on the hook, and I've been a CEO for 15 years, so that's fine. On the other hand, I think you really do want a good set of cards, and I think about, what I was looking for was really big TAM, a board and a culture at the company where I felt included, belonging, like I was entering sort of my tribe. In this category, I really was also looking for a winning business model. And I think now we'll talk, I'm sure, about business models with AI, but certainly a subscription business model. And now we have payments too. So that's super exciting. And I really think that I wanted a category I could get passionate about. I think if you're going to go to work and work this hard, you really want to love what you do. And so that small business customer, I mean, they're like consumers in many ways and really near and dear to my heart, having also been an entrepreneur. So it was just hard to find, all of those things. And the CEO job is open. That's what everybody forgets, that often in the best companies, the CEO job is not open, another job's open. And I was pretty clear I want to be only a CEO.
Yeah. So I'm sure many people have heard of Xero before, but they might not know exactly what you all do. So do you want to just give the 2-sentence summary of what is Xero today?
Sure.
And what's the scale of the operation?
Sure. We're global software for small businesses and their advisors. We serve 4.5 million customers in core accounting, tax, compliance, payroll, payments is a newer area for us. We do that across 180 countries, but our biggest geos are Australia, the UK, and the US. And then we have a basket of other countries, New Zealand, South Africa, Canada, Singapore, where we also service. So we're just approaching 2 billion USD in revenue. We trade on the ASX, not on NASDAQ, but we are a technology first business. And the most unique thing about us is we were founded in Wellington, New Zealand.
Wonderful. So when you took over as CEO February 2023, and the stock price doubled in the first 2 years, what did you get right in those first 2 years?
Look, first of all, I remember we talked about picking wisely. So I think that Zero was a company that was already a very strong company, as we said, participating in the macro tailwind of digitization of small businesses. Small businesses continue to digitize, not just their front office or back office. Why? Because they need more productivity and efficiency, right? They're the heart of most economies. So I think that Zero was strong long before I arrived. What are the specific things I focused on? Number one, balancing growth and profitability. The company had very high margins, but was losing money. So, really, I would say right sizing the cost structure. Number two, a real shift from just volume of subscribers to creating more value for subscribers. So, this era has been marked by really not just a focus on growing subscribers, but balancing subscribers and penetration per subscriber. And this is by doing those key jobs we talked about, not just accounting, but payroll and payments, which is a growing business for us. And maybe the third area was really trying to infuse agility or more agility in the culture and best of breed talent, new talent, refreshing our skill set, if you will, for the era of growth that we're in, while maintaining, I think, the best of this amazing culture and the talent we have from where we were founded in the Southern Hemisphere. So just trying to balance the infusion of new talent with new skills that Zero needs at this size with the amazing talent we already have, given our roots in Australia and New Zealand.
So when you came in, you talked about right sizing the cost structure. To put it explicit, so there was a layoff of, I think, about 15% of the employees. I think 700 or so, 700, 800 employees within, relatively early on into your tenure. How do you, as a new CEO, build a trusting, high performing culture when you have to do a right size like that? And I know you took a lot of accountability for, hey, our planning over the course of the last few years wasn't great, and so we take ownership of this decision. But how did you build a high performing, kind of high trust culture while also implementing this reorg?
Well, first of all, I think that the most important thing is people are smart. So I think you want to treat your employees like what they are. They're a really smart group of people who decide to dedicate their time and their energy to Zero. And so I think before I arrived, I did the good fortune of having 3 months at Zero before I officially stepped into the CEO role. And I used that time to do employee surveys, meetings. So by the time I came to my first all hands, I shared with them sort of a state of the state and read back both what I'd heard from employees on the company's risks and opportunities. And I also sort of gave them an outside in view of the world and where the world was headed. So I think you want to use as much time as possible to really kind of treat your employees as smart and give them transparency. Today we run, a monthly all hands. It's our global all hands. It is live. We talk about everything from like what's going on in the markets to how we're performing. We, read back our OKRs, our company objectives every month, how we're doing red, yellow, green. We talk about hard things, like in the case of the restructure, we talked about that. So I kind of believe that you want to just be as transparent as possible within bounds. You can't tell employees everything, but you want to give them the why. And I think when you give employees the why, even if they don't agree with your decisions, I think they understand the context. And I think you want to keep them as current as possible. So I try as much as possible to kind of keep them in real time with what's going on inside, the company and how I'm thinking about things.
Yeah. There's been a lot of buzz, hype, paranoia, fear in the market the last couple of years, and in the last like 3 months in particular, about AI
Yeah.
and the SaaS crash, SaaS apocalypse, et cetera. How do you communicate that? And that is candidly, that's impacted your share price, it's impacted FranklinCovey's share price, it's impacted a lot of companies. How do you communicate to your employees given the kind of macro environment of AI threatening seat-based businesses? We saw last week, for example, Block had a 40% layoff in one day. And thus, I'm sure a lot of employees are anxious about, is my company next? So how do you communicate with your team now about the impact of AI on the market broadly?
Sure. Well, first of all, let's talk about AI specifically for Zero and how we're talking about it. Then we talk about things like a market dislocation that happened, I think over the last 3 months. You've talked about what's happened in the SaaS category. So, first of all, I think that you always want to root your employees in your why. And, for us, we're very clear. We are the builders of technology for small businesses. They have a whole other day job, whether that's running a podcast, whether that's running a retail store, whether that's running a startup. Like, most of them, for 97, 98, 99% of the startups we deal with, they don't come from tech. They don't think of themselves as builders of software for a living. They think of their vocation as something else, and software enables them to do their job better. So I think for us on AI, we've always been clear that we are the AI pioneers for our customers. Like they look to us to make AI work for them. And so we believe we can be net winners because our job is to build technology, right? And to take advantage of everything that is out there. I mean, we took advantage of the cloud disruption to create Zero. Zero was built on the disruption of desktop software to the cloud. We are, our own business accelerated with the opportunity in mobile. AI will be a force multiplier if we are very clear on what our customers need us to do with that technology, which for them is to make magical experiences that make their lives better. So, AI is not new to us. We've been doing machine learning for years. We've been doing traditional AI and then, of course, generative AI. So, I just want to be clear that we see it as a net opportunity for our business because we are the translators and builders of technology for our core customers. Now, how are we explaining that belief system against a market where SaaS is melting down? First of all, what I tell our employees is, and by the way, we've been telling our employees we need to accelerate on AI and think about it mostly with excitement and 20 like 80% excitement, 20% paranoia, like both. I'm like, we can be net winners if we are adopters as aggressively as possible, right? If you let the technology wave go past you and you don't adopt it, you are at risk. And if you take advantage of it and are the user of it, the translator of it, the pioneer in trying new things with it, then you can be a net winner. So we've been saying this to our employees for months. And I think the market basically kind of skipped, many, 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 many theoretical chapters ahead of the last 3 months, saying like everybody who builds software is going to be, a loser, which we don't fundamentally believe. But we were signaling, to our employees early on, we have to be on our front foot, front foot, front foot. And so what I said to employees is what you might expect. I said, look, guys, we don't control the markets. Okay. We don't control the markets. And for any company to be successful, it is a combination as what we talked about, right? Good genes, good tailwinds, and our own execution. So if you just put aside the dislocation, the same truism holds. A market can dislocate in the short term and it can still be a massive opportunity for you over the medium and long term. And what we're saying is like, the market is trying to judge winners and losers indiscriminately. Our job is to be a net winner. We have that capacity simply because of what we do for our customers. We are the system of record and the builder of applications for them. So I think I've just said to them, like, we don't control the market. Dislocations happen. I described being at Yodely when, the internet went bust, 1.0. Was that the end of Yodely? No. In the short term, though, we were a private company. We needed to have enough cash to survive. And we survived and became the backbone for the fintech era of apps. Like we were a net winner. We were very early and had to survive, as at the collapse of the dot-com bust. At StubHub, I mean, we had a business that was doing fantastically, and I was the CEO of StubHub, and we were doing $5 billion a year in ticket volume. We sell for $4 billion, and less than 30 days later, our volume goes to zero with COVID, zero, and we're no longer owned by eBay. We're a private company. And we go from being this very successful company to having an existential threat that we're going to run out of money. I mean, like, we survived that. And again, StubHub went public last year, so, and it's doing great and it's well poised to keep competing with Ticketmaster. So just because the market dislocates doesn't mean you're wrong. Like it means you have to do what's necessary in the short term. And in Zero, we'll continue to keep focusing on using AI. Luckily for us, we have a strong balance sheet. We perform very well. We are very comfortable that we are and will, be able to transform ourselves as long as we keep staying on our front foot and using AI technology aggressively. So that's how we talk about it. And I'm like, you don't control the markets. Stay focused on the customer, stay focused on your opportunity.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We talk about the famous Benjamin Graham line: in the short term, the markets are a voting machine; in the long term, they're a weighing machine. And I think kind of similar. The markets there will be a short term dislocation, but at the end, if you're building a great product that's solving customer needs in a way that's financially valuable over time, it will work out for you.
Yeah. One last thing we say to employees, which you and I both know, having lived technology cycles. When a new technology comes along, it typically doesn't shrink markets, it accelerates market growth. So, I was at Google a few years before you and was the first GM of Local and Maps. So, along with the product team, we built Google Local and Google Maps. And yes, we disrupted the Yellow Page industry, but that industry was $22 billion in local search. Today, local search is almost $200 billion in local advertising. And that's a 10x size of the market, right? Because of the technology enabled by, maps, mapping technology, Google Earth, and so on. So don't be so sure that markets shrink. Markets typically accelerate and multiply with new technology.
Absolutely. I think it's such a great point. I think that the Google, the Google Maps experience, my first job at Google was working on Google Local actually. So I was there a couple of years after you. Yep. And I think you're totally right. The experience was worlds better. And because of that, the market ended up growing significantly. So one other AI related product question for you, you all built Jax, which is a kind of AI super agent that helps with tax and accounting, et cetera. And it's built, my understanding is on top of OpenAI. How do you think in the future about customers using AI specific
Mhm.
tools within products versus everything going through the frontier labs? I think, you've seen the last couple of weeks, like Anthropic launches a skill for a new category, and 10 companies in that category lose billions of dollars in shareholder value because there's a belief that in the future, everybody will go through the frontier labs for all AI related product problems. So curious how you think about that. Like, will people have multiple different super agents for different products, or will OpenAI just end up building the like tax assistant in the future?
Right. So I think there are multiple questions in there. So let me tackle them in kind. First of all, we do think actually we don't just use OpenAI, we use multiple models ourselves because models tend to be, at least today, very have better efficacy against certain tasks. So you're seeing that people will use different LLMs for different specialized tasks. So an agent that does one activity versus another might you want to be model agnostic and be able to use the model that maybe is well suited to the task. Perfect example, OpenAI is better on images than Nano Banana from Gemini, at least today. When I run the same query on both models, because I'm the subscriber to both, I get vastly different quality output on images. Okay, so that's a perfect example. So I think you want to be able to build specialized agents and use the LLM model, that's best suited to the task. So think of these as sub agents. Now, I am really happy. I think I was reading on LinkedIn a couple days ago that somebody's starting to describe their agents as super agents. I'm like, we said that about Jax a year ago. Like, look, Jax is an orchestrator of multiple sub-specialized agents, like the agent that might do financial insights, is different from the agent that does auto bank reconciliation. It's different from the agent that might do invoice creation. All right. And again, we want our customers to not have to worry about that. So why do we call Jax a super agent? Because we're clear that our customer wants to buy a solution end to end. And that solution likely will create multiple agents, will likely require multiple agents around different tasks or workflows. In our case, we do multiple jobs on the platform: tax, payments, payroll, invoicing, bill pay, right? So I'm pretty sure our customer isn't going to want to go build five sub agents, have them orchestrate with each other, move data, through OpenAI versus in a secure, trusted platform where all of these agents can talk to each other seamlessly, and all they need to worry about is paying one price, or and having one solution. So that's what we call Jax a super agent. So what do I feel like? I feel like remember we talked about this world of builders, non-builders. I recently gave this analogy, which I hope is useful for our customers and our employees. I'm like, what percentage of homes do you think will in the United States are custom built by owners every year? Of all the homes bought in the United States, what percent are custom built? Close, 3%. So you and I could both build a custom home, right? We could buy a piece of land, we could hire a contractor. So why don't people do it? Why is it that 97% of all homes purchased are either purchased new or used, even new builds, but new builds by a contractor, and only 3% are owner build? Because most of us wake up and think like building a house is not my day job. I don't actually find it fun. Now, 3% find it fun. Okay, they find it fun. They want to build, they want to choose, they want to custom create. So I think of our SMBs the same way. Will there be some builders in there? Sure. And they might want to go build agents, and we might need to equip that too. We have an ecosystem today. Today we have APIs. I'm not sure they still want to build on the open internet. They might still want access to their data held in a secure place, cyber, reliability, right? They may want a bunch of trusted infrastructure. That's how we think about the builders on our platform. They already use our APIs. But 97% of our customers do not use our APIs. They come to us and buy an all in one solution. So I'm sure there will be people who build directly on OpenAI and on Claude, and that's great. And I think there's a whole class of customers and people and businesses who really are like, hey, can you make it available to me? And at an affordable price with high value. And all I hear when I kind of open the news is how magical AI is. Well, it better be magical for me. Can you figure that out, please? That's the way we think about the world.
Franklin Covey Institute research finds that nearly 87% of leaders view disruption as something to merely survive. That means only 13% of leaders view it as a strategic opportunity to innovate and grow. Become one of the mighty few when you download Franklin Covey's guide, From Shock to Strategic Advantage: How Leaders Convert Disruption into Opportunity, for a leadership roadmap that's anchored in purpose, agility, and collaboration. Grab your free copy from the show notes and discover how today's great leaders are using disruption as the fuel to create positive and lasting impact. I love that analogy, the custom home build. I've not heard that one before. My kind of equivalent of it is there's a ton of recipe books and you can go to the supermarket and get any ingredient you want, and yet DoorDash and Uber Eats are still an enormous category because a lot of people just want to be able to, call in for their delivery. They don't want to cook their own dinner every night. So I totally agree with you. So I want to move from zero to talking about your own experience. You have a fascinating background. You've been a startup founder. You've been an executive at turnarounds. You've been an executive at hyperscale. And you've been CEO, even a professional CEO that's brought in. What in your background, what's one of the experiences that you think is the most formative? Like, where did you learn the most in your career?
Let's see. Formative experiences in my career. I've had quite a few, but let me try and pick one that I don't often talk about. Yodely was a very formative experience. I became a founder at like 28, 29. I had the opportunity to join five technical co-founders. It was formative in so many ways, right? I raised money for the first time. I had to build a business model for the first time. I went from kind of somebody who managed a couple people to sort of having the moral authority of a founder and having to build teams and learn that teams were like, even though they were all the same age as me and some had more experience than me, I was still the boss, not just their friend, especially that was especially formative when I had to lay them off, when we had to survive multiple busts. Um, we were a platform. And so I learned about how to build platforms, right? We tried a B2C, it didn't work. I mean, we actually tried to build a consumer experience and failed. So Yodely was quite formative, I think, because it was a place where I learned to be on the hook, face extreme pressure as a founder, kind of that live or die. It was a pioneer, so I learned a lot about building business models. I built my reputation at Yodely. That led to the job at Google, and I think even today, people think about Yodely as one of the backbones of the financial ecosystem. So that was probably a very, very formative experience for me.
What about people talk? Elon Musk will say that starting a company is like chewing glass and staring into the abyss.
Yeah.
What's one of the hardest experiences of your careers?
Oh gosh, I've had many. I mean, I'm going to talk about one that I don't talk about often, which is Joyous. I started a video commerce platform after leaving Google. In between, I was actually at a startup briefly, and so most people think that that would be the one I talk about because I wasn't there long. But Joyous was heartbreaking for me. It was amazing and heartbreaking. So Joyous was video commerce, shoppable video channel. We did beauty, we did fashion, and it worked. It absolutely worked. And, I think in 2010, 2011, when I started it, we had to build studios, we had to build merchandising, we had to build shoppable technology. None of the video platforms were interested in commerce at all. We raised money. We got to about 20 million in revenue, and no VC would fund us. Just think about that for a moment. Today, video commerce is how big of a category? We had patents, but because there was no rails on which to ride, and by this I mean no marketplace rails, so that we wouldn't have to build our own merchandising, right, and buy everything. Studios, like not the influencers you see today who'd be happy. Like when I would go talk to influencers about making videos for us, they all wanted to charge us an arm and a leg. There was no shoppable cart on Instagram, on Facebook. There was certainly no TikTok. I talked to YouTube about acquiring us, and they sort of had no interest in commerce. So, we got to 20 million in revenue, and we restructured the company and ultimately sold for very little. And, and we not shut down Yodely. Joy still goes, but it's owned by someone else. And it's 2017. And when we sort of gave up and sold, and, look at the category in 2026, like 9 years later. A good friend of mine now runs YouTube shopping, video shopping. Like he's like one of my neighbors and closest friends. And it's heartbreaking and yet amazing. So we were right and we were wrong, right? We were right about the idea. So many people told me shoppable video. We were creating infomercials. and poo-pooed our beautiful videos. If you put them up today, people would say like, wow, that is like world-class production, and of course you can buy a product through watching a great video about it. It's heartbreaking. Why? Because we were right, but too early. And in Yodely, we were right, but too early, but we were able to survive. In the case of Joyous, like we had raised 50 million and people were like, that's too much money. So I struggle with it all the time because I love the company. I love what we were building. Sometimes I think like, man, what else could I have done to try and get money to make it through? But that is the history of technology. You can be right and be early. And sometimes the unit economics don't work until Rails develop, right? Today, between marketplaces, shoppable video technology you could run on all of these platforms where there's already native distribution. People are interested in watching the videos and they're there in the billions. Not having to own inventory, not having to own studios. Like the unit economics of shoppable video now work like a lot more than they did when I had to build all the infra.
Yeah, that's a. I can hear you on the heartbreak on timing there. That the Mark Andreessen quote. There's no bad product. There's only bad timing. I think I talked earlier about our Google overlap.
Yeah.
My teammate at YouTube in 2011, Grant LaFontaine, subsequently started Whatnot, which is shoppable video and valued $11 billion. So it's not the identical idea to what you were discussing at Joyous, but very
shoppable video. Yeah, and it started after we shut down.
Very, very similar. He started it, probably 9 years after you did. And now it's a decacorn. So it is so interesting how these things end up working out.
But just not in any version of its former self. So it's not like the company's dead, but it's not what I imagined. Anyway.
Yeah. So I want to talk about leadership lessons and some leadership advice. You wrote a great book on kind of some of your leadership ideas and principles. One of them is about overcoming single choice thinking. So can you share what is single choice thinking and how do you overcome it?
Sure. It's very simple. I think most people who come to me, let's say for career advice, will say like, here's a good example. Someone will come to me like, Sukhinder, I want to leave Google and go to this startup. I'm like, should I do it? And I'm like, okay, like this is a life or death decision, like if I leave, I'm going to leave all this behind. I'm like, so what else have you considered? Is this like a one of one choice? Like, have you generated 10 choices for yourself? Like, how do you know it's this startup? Like, how many decisions are in this? There's the decision to leave Google. There's the decision to go into this category. There's the decision to go into this role. There's the decision to join this company. There are 4 choices in there. And you've like put it all on this single choice to join this company. Like, why don't you generate 10 opportunities for yourself so you have a method of comparing? Like, be a smart risk taker by recognizing there's always more than one choice. This sounds so obvious, but most people evaluate choices if they're one of one, life or death. And most choices are not one of one. They're like one of 10. Your first opportunity is to like create 10 viable paths, right? And then you can compare the choice you're about to make. So I think people are very much ride or die on a single decision. And I think there are many, many choices available to you at any point in time. I think to be a smart risk taker is to like lay them all out and to get very clear on why you're making the choice you are. And even then, if it fails, there will be another one and another one and another one. It's so people think of like their life as like single choices that are life or death. And mostly I'm like, well, generate lots of choices, be a smart risk taker. Once you've made one, understand that there are probably 10 more choices between you and success anyway. Like it's never a single choice.
Yeah. I read the book Decisive by Chip Heath, I think, many moons ago. He talks about the RAP framework, and the first step in making a good decision is to widen your options. Yes. People get this like very narrow tunnel vision, and that's why the single choice thinking and framing really resonated with me about the importance of thinking broader than whatever you've locked in your tunnel vision on. Another lesson of leadership is about telling the truth early, and kind of you credit yourself with doing a great job of avoiding kind of an unnecessarily sunny disposition. I think a lot of leaders struggle with that. I think it's easy to stand up in front of a company and say, everything's going to work out, just believe me. And I think that great leaders kind of share authentically, but people are nervous about the risk of lack of engagement. If you tell your company, hey, things are not rosy, the numbers aren't looking great, are your best employees all going to go polish their resume, update LinkedIn profiles, and apply for the next job? So talk me through your mindset before telling the truth early. Like how are you confident to do that?
Yeah, I think you hit it. Like, I think that your job as a CEO is to be a realistic optimist. It's like, it's not to be, I think it is true that like people want clarity. Even though people say they like ambiguity, lots of people don't like lots of uncertainty. So they're looking for, it's like all of it, and it's sometimes hard. They're looking for authenticity, transparency, yet a reason to believe, right? Clarity. If the future is very uncertain, what is certain? Does that make sense? Certainty within uncertainty. So I think as a CEO, I think your job is to sort of take all of that and say, okay, well, how can I acknowledge what's ambiguous, yet give people clarity on the things that need to be true for us to be successful, and a path or confidence that you can get there, even if the path is hard. I don't think people want, uncertainty and just like, hey, look, the world is uncertain. Let's be paralyzed. I don't think that's leadership. So I don't know. I think that, but I don't think it's to be an unrealistic optimist, right? And so my goal with my broadest teams is to be, a realistic optimist, and give employees certainty, reasons to believe while acknowledging uncertainty, because I don't think you can, or ambiguity in the environment, or even ambiguity internally on something like we don't not ready to make this decision. We'll make this decision at this point. Um, so I think that's actually the path I try and kind of weave.
I think that framing, that mindset of realistic optimist is a great one. So before we go to our final kind of closing section, I want to go a little bit on the personal side. So you are a mother of three, and I am, as I mentioned in our brief chat beforehand, I'm going to be soon having my first kid. There's a famous Anne Marie Slaughter book article, I guess, why women can't have it all. How have you balanced life and work? How has being a mother to three changed who you are as a CEO?
Yeah. So first of all, I really hate this concept that you can just balance it all. I think most people, most parents, not just mothers, but these days dads too, I think we're all kind of just striving to do the best we can and always probably disappointing someone. So I think it's not a balance. I think it's cycles in which somebody is getting the short end of the stick while somebody else gets their fair share of your time. Does that make sense? So I think you're cycling through life in these phases. You're about to become a new parent. You're going to go through one cycle. I am in a different cycle because my children are older. So, like, what they need from me is different, right? And yet I still face constant guilt because it's true that like when I'm away for, 2 weeks on the road, even though my teenage son says, it doesn't really pay attention to me when I'm home. When I'm gone, I will get a text in the middle of the night, which is like, hey, like when you coming home? Or I've got to get on a parent teacher conference, or, like he's missing something and I'm not there to help. And so I don't think I balance it all. I think I am very comfortable at this point in my life that someone's going to get the short end of the stick. So I kind of like try and plan these cycles if you can. You're like, hey, this is going to suck, or I'm going to be gone this long, or what have you. That's one thing I do. The second thing, and I think I've also gotten to this stage of my life, I am completely unapologetic for when I put work aside for my children. Like completely. Like, I have one of the benefits of being in a job at this stage in my career, and that's really hard because being a CEO is hard, is you should also have flexibility to do what you need to do when you need to do it, because there are times you're flat out, right? So yeah, if I need to leave work at 4 o'clock so I can catch my son's championship basketball game, I'm doing it unapologetically. Like that's a moment I'm not going to miss. And, I'm going to be working till kingdom come. So I will say that I'm pretty clear myself on the moments that are can't miss moments for me, and I really don't feel like I need to apologize to anyone because I still miss a ton. So I think just being clear on those can't miss moments and blocking them out, there will always be demands on you, always. So at this stage, you know, I try not to miss the can't miss moments.
That's perfect. My other personal question is, I saw that recently you became a part and owner and investor in the Toronto Tempo WNBA team.
Yeah.
So share about that. Why that investment?
Well,
Or
first,
why that decision?
keep in mind, before I ran Zero, I ran StubHub. So I got to be in the business of live sports and entertainment. And that was so fun. So fun. So I do love live sports, even more than live music. I love live sports and I love the NBA. It's sort of like one of the fastest games, I would say. Like, I'm a lover of all sports, but definitely, have become a big basketball fan. So when I left StubHub, we sold the company, we managed through COVID. I swore to myself that I would stay involved in sports. And the likely way that would happen would be through some sort of ownership opportunity. And so for the last two, I guess I made the investment in the Temple a year ago, became public, and they're going to play their inaugural season this year. So I was looking to, find a basketball opportunity, find it in a place that had emotional resonance for me. I'm Canadian. I have spent a good amount of my own time in areas of gender equity. And like, I think the opportunity in women's sports commercially is massive. If you just look at viewership, media rights. So that's how the Tempo came to be. Luckily, I had good relationships in sports post my StubHub time, and I was looking for a couple years to find the right opportunity. And when I heard Toronto was getting a franchise, I reached out to folks I know. As a proud Canadian and a woman, I'm super, super excited to see Canada have its first WNBA team.
Awesome. Final question before we go to our close is about back to your roots. So you are Canadian. You now work at a company that, as you said earlier, was founded in New Zealand. You are based in California and in Palo Alto, or in the kind of peninsula area.
Yeah.
And your company operates globally. So how do you integrate all of these different global cultures? How does being Canadian influence you? But then also, how do you build this incredibly globally diverse team?
Well, first of all, I have the benefit of running a team that was founded in New Zealand. And what New Zealand and Canada share in common is, given their relatively small populations, you end up with curious, inclusive, open to the world cultures where they realize that, the world is an ecosystem more than it is a place where one culture is dominant. Does that make sense? And so New Zealand's stance the world has always been open. It needs to be out of necessity. Canada's is the same. So it's relatively easy for me to integrate into Zero's culture. And I think to hold a company where we have, 700 people in now 700 people-ish in Tel Aviv, people in Johannesburg and Cape Town, people in Singapore, well over 1,000 people in New Zealand, hundreds in Australia. It's really fun. And by the way, Canada too. So like, we're a very distributed team, but I love that about the business. I love it. I love it.
You spend a lot of time on the road?
I do, but it turns out the West Coast of the United States is a great place to fly to any of our offices. They're all a direct flight. And so I really enjoy and appreciate that I get to participate in a company whose values very much mirror my own and how I was raised.
Awesome. Well, as you know, FranklinCovey is a leadership company. And so we always end with the same question. Who is a leader who has greatly influenced you in your career, and what lesson can all of us take from them?
So the same leader I always quote, that's my dad. He was an entrepreneur. He and my mom ran a joint medical practice in Canada, but he loved being a business person as much as he loved his profession. The lesson you can learn, like, I'm not sure your vocation and your purpose need to be different. My father loved running small business. He loved serving people. The model I saw is like service, vocation, they can be the same thing.
Wonderful. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time today to share about Zero, about your career trajectory, and many of your life lessons. It's been an amazing conversation. I've learned a lot and really enjoyed it. So thank you so much for the time.
Thank you.
Wonderful. And to all of our listeners, thank you for joining us again for another week of FranklinCovey on Leadership, and hope you'll join us again next week.